What's up, everybody? Welcome to Thursday. This is the DraftKings YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter page, depending on where you are finding us. But more importantly, it is the Slate, the all sports edition, where we get into pretty much whatever we want. We got a 5-game NBA slate tonight we can get into a little bit. Some interesting guys ruled in, ruled out. Of course, the Sony Open, which Reid Fowler, my guy right here, is tracking intently and intensely as well. And of course, the NFL playoffs, they are on the horizon. 6 games taking place, the wild card round between Saturday and Monday. We got time to break them all down here with you for the better part of the next half hour or so. We thank you for being here. I am Adam Kaufman, and on the heels of watching the Eternals earlier today, I am joined by a god among men, Reid Fowler, as mentioned. How are you, man?
Good. I'm just happy there's no chat right now that I can see, because I haven't seen it. And you're looking at 50% of this panel right now is a spoiler machine.
No,
all he does is watch.
I would never.
Oh yes, you would. No, you wouldn't.
No, I'm just lonely, and so when I like to talk.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited to break it down. There's a lot of stuff happening right now, so it's a good time to be a sports fan.
For sure. Well, let us begin with the DraftKings Sportsbook and, of course, the NFL, because NFL is king. We all know that at DraftKings and beyond. It's what the people are going to be glued to. 2 games on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, the 1 on Monday to wrap up Wildcard Weekend once we get there, obviously. But it begins, Reid, with those 2 games on Saturday. And let's take a look at where things stand. The very latest on the DK Sportsbook in terms of the odds. And both our teams are in action. Your Raiders in Cincinnati, of course, pardon me, on the heels of what was just an insane regular season finish. And, of course, my Patriots in Buffalo taking on the Bills. So we got those 2 games happening over the course of Saturday, both relatively close spreads, 5 points in the Raiders game, 4 in the Patriots game. Let's start with that first game when, it was, first off, just I'm sure you got into this during the week, so we won't spend much time on it, but I mean, what were your emotions sitting there watching that game saying, am I Raiders going to make the playoffs? Are they going to fall apart? Is this going to end in a tie? Is someone going to get ticked and go for the win? What happens with the Steelers? Who's going to Cincinnati? I mean, there were so many things at play, and we were after midnight. It was crazy.
So my answer to that question is yes. It was everything. It was everything. I was tired as well because, on the East Coast, these games, if they do what they did, then it goes to 12 past midnight, and you can't just, unless you're someone crazy, like it takes me time to decompress, right? Not even like Sans, like take away like watching the Raiders and someone like a team that I have, a vested interest in and a personal interest in, but just anything, watching the football game, watching all Sunday games, like, I have to come down from all of that. So it takes me a while to get back, get to bed, get into that REM stage.
Sure.
But yeah, the full gamut, here we go again. I was getting into conversations on Twitter with Matt Pearl, a guy who, we've done a lot of work with, about when the Raiders trade touchdowns for field goals. That is never good. And I don't care if they're up by 28 points. It is never good because the Raiders can do what they did. They can give up 4th down conversions. They make stupid plays, penalties. Gus Bradley's defense is whatever you want to do against it, you can pretty much scheme against it. And that's where we get into this game, where I think that number is baked into the Cincinnati Bengals at their top, at their absolute zenith, at 5 points. And the Raiders coming off of, a 5-quarter marathon type of behemoth game where, they have less rest. They're obviously a team that's not coming in with the same amount of momentum that Cincinnati is. Cincinnati beat the Chiefs, whether you want to believe they got help from the refs or not. They beat the Chiefs, and in week 18, they sat all their players, right? Essentially, Jamar Chase broke the record. So I think if you're looking at this from a betting perspective, I would have loved to get the Raiders or to be on the show right now where the Raiders are at 6.5, because that was beautiful. And I hope you guys got that 6.5 number, because when you look at the Bengals, I think what they want to do they can, but having said that, I don't really necessarily think that the Bengals match up enough to warrant this number. I would still take it at 5 at -110. You have a really good defensive line with the Raiders, a struggling offensive line. We've heard it all season, even from beginning, right? The preseason, where they wanted to take Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase, and the Jamar Chase pick obviously worked out. But I do think that this is still at their peak. I think if you're the Raiders, and I mentioned that Gus Bradley defense, yes, it's a cover 3, and the Bengals have a similar type of offense, similar, not the same as the Chiefs, but I really don't think that this number is I think it's more like 4.5 is where I would have put it, 4.5. So I do think there's still some value there with the Raiders. I would probably wait. So I think this number might get back up to 5.5. It might get back up to 6. I think that half point doesn't really matter. So I still like it at 5, but I just don't think that number is where it should be right now.
I know, Reid, and if anyone has questions, comments, thoughts, whatever they are, get them in the chat, YouTube, Twitter, again, Twitch, wherever you're finding us. We'll, do our best to help you out with some of your sports bets, DFS, whatever it may be. And we'll get to daily fantasy here for DraftKings available to you, obviously, in just a little bit. But maybe I am guilty of getting a little more into, taking that path down narrative street than you are. And that's, probably more an indictment of me than it is of you as well. I know a lot of people don't like to dive into narratives the way that I do, but, I think back to Sunday, and again, the wildness that was that night to set up Wildcard Weekend here for, directly affecting all 4 of these teams that we're talking about that are playing on Saturday. If I'm the Raiders, we've seen now 8 head coaches over the course of the season, and then right to today with David Culley for Houston getting let go, fired across the NFL. One of them to this point, one of them to this point is not Brandon Staley, by the way, despite the fact he, basically threw away his opportunity at a playoff spot for the Chargers this year. But if I'm the Raiders, I'm going into this one not with swagger necessarily, because again, they are 5-point dogs against what I think we can agree is a superior Bengals team that's superior in most facets, whether it's skill players or just, again, overall team. But I would have felt differently about the Raiders had they tied, had they backed into the playoffs, really just limped in, blown the large lead, all of it, versus sort of, dusting themselves off, getting up off the mat, so, getting ticked off at the end, kicking the field goal to win it, putting sort of an exclamation point on that game. I think Derek Carr, say what you will about him, obviously, but I think he's got a great head on his shoulders. I think he's a really well-composed, even-keel guy. He's not going to go into the moment intimidated. He's a former, MVP candidate a few years back. I think, I don't think it would be nuts to look at the Raiders as one, especially when you look at the Bengals playoff history, having not won a playoff game in decades. And you look at the Raiders who, they could go into this one with just a little bit of spoiler of a little bit of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I don't think
story.
Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily view them as a Cinderella team. I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl, but I absolutely do think they could go in and upset Cincinnati. And that wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, I agree. And the one thing that you have with this game specifically, right, is you have 2 quarterbacks. This is their first time starting in an NFL playoff game, and you have 2 head coaches in the same scenario. We've seen Zach Taylor, and we were critical of Zach Taylor midway through the season of why are you running the ball when you're down by 10, right? Why are you passing the ball when you're up by 14, right? In those situations, you kind of get a little bit worried about what's going on here. And with Rich Bisaccia, I mean, he's essentially holding that team together. Look at what they've done, right? Like they've had so many issues, and they're a 10-win playoff team. That I don't think anybody expected that, especially after what happened midway through the season. Like the Raiders can get to the quarterback without blitzing. Right? They can with their front 4, and maybe they bring an extra blitzer every now and then, but they can get to the quarterback and create pressure. If you take a look at the game back in week 11, Kauf, where it was in a dome, right? It was at Raider Stadium in Las Vegas. You know how many yards Joe Burrow had? And this is why, I agree with you in a lot of ways. Like you would think, right, with this offense and the skill players that they have, and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and the Cincinnati Bengals are passing it a lot more since week 12 until now, as opposed to the entire season. But just off the top of your head, what do you think his passing yards was?
Man, I have no idea. Let's call it 330 just for fun.
He was 20 for 29 for 148.
That's not good.
Not good, right? And I'm not saying
percentage wasn't bad, but the total yards, that's terrible.
I don't know. So I'm not saying that that's going to be the same, right? It's in a different setting. It's outdoors. It's at home in Cincinnati. But you take a look at, like, things could go wrong, right? Things could get a little wonky with these new coaches because there's just added pressure. So love it at the 6.5. Still like it at the 5 number for Raiders.
So there's that game. Obviously, the projected point totals 48.5 right now in the DraftKings Sportsbook. That is not the case in what is expected to be frigid Buffalo Saturday night. I mean, it is, we're talking about like 0 degrees, maybe even below that. I mean, it seems to be getting worse by the day. The projected temperature in Buffalo between the Patriots and Bills, of course, it's round 3 here of this season. They split their 2 meetings. They each won in the other team's stadium, but this you could look at those 2 games very, very differently, especially going into this one. The Patriots winning in Buffalo several weeks ago in a game that Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times. We talked all about that game at the time because the weather was just out of whack, not cold, but windy. This one, I don't think it's going to be windy, but again, it's going to be so cold that it's hard to know what to expect specifically from this game aside from low production. 44 is the projected number in terms of the over-under. The Bills, this line has moved a little bit. I've seen it as low as 3. Right now it's 4. I've seen it as high as, 4.5 or 5. So it's jumped just a little bit, but all sort of stayed in the same couple point range. Everything you said about the head coaches of the Bengals and the Raiders, it doesn't apply here. Obviously, it's we got 2 head coaches that certainly know what they're doing. But we got a rookie quarterback for the Patriots and Mac Jones, who's never been in this situation, a national champ in college, but he's never been in this situation. And of course, for the Bills, Josh Allen, who has actually performed pretty well in those poor weather conditions, aside from, that game in the wind a few weeks back. So what are your expectations for this one here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried about Mac Jones. And I'm sure a lot of Patriots fans are disguising hubris for anxiety, right? In terms of like resting on the Lord, like what I'm trying to say is I think a lot of it goes into
Pats fans are cocky because you still look at it and say, they're the Bills, they'll blow it.
Right. Like the Patriots just have so much history behind their success. And we all forget too, this is one of 7 teams or 6 teams last year, or 7 teams that didn't make the playoffs. Right, last year. And we all just think that, that's weird because the Patriots just always make the playoffs. They're a team that just, and this is crazy. Like you look at just what they've done, they're just always there, but they didn't make the playoffs last year. And now they're in, and now they face a familiar foe in Buffalo Bills. What I worry about here, and sans the weather, it's going to be cold. This is the coldest game that Mac Jones is going to play in ever in his life. Right. Like he grew up in Florida, played at Alabama. Yep. This will be the coldest game that this guy is going to play. He's a rookie quarterback, and you got the best coaching, umbrella around him. It still doesn't it still matters what he does. And when you take a look at what he's done from an efficiency standpoint in the last couple of games, it hasn't been great. From Josh Allen, from a passing standpoint and passing props and yards, it hasn't been great for him either. But now you look at this game where Buffalo's established a run game with Devin Singletary. Not going to say it's going to be successful, but at least they have some confidence in him being the lead guy. He is the lead back right now. And you have a Patriots team that if they get down, Kauf, and you can speak to this better than I can, is that I'm not sure that Mac Jones, if he's down, and we've seen him come back. We've seen him come back in second halves after poor first halves. But this is a different animal. Right. This is the playoffs. And I'm just a little worried about Mac Jones. Now, having said all of that, you give me 4 points with Bill Belichick in the playoffs. You gotta be out of your mind if you don't really consider omitting everything that I just said and just using that specific piece of information. Bill Belichick getting points. There's a lot of negative EV out there. That's one positive EV is Bill Belichick getting points in the playoffs.
there are a lot of things that, especially as someone who, follows the Patriots closer than I follow any other team as, part of other work that I do. I think about a lot of different things. I look at Mac Jones, all the things you talked about in terms of the weather and never playing in this, obviously, and where he went to school and his upbringing and all of that. And the fact that also over the last month, he's not been good. He's had 6 turnovers over the last 4 games, and he's facing not only a Buffalo team that he struggled against just a couple weeks ago, but also a Bills team that has the best defense in the entire NFL. So that's one. But I also look at it and say, like you said, I wouldn't necessarily count out Mac Jones if he falls behind, because we've seen him come back. That's the thing. He's not a guy, especially for a rookie. He doesn't get panicked. He doesn't, lose his mind. He stays composed. As long as he's not turning the ball over, he stays composed. And he's probably, hopefully, not going to beat himself. I have faith in him to be able to come back if they fall down. I'm more concerned, if I'm a Patriots fan, which I am, but for anyone listening, I'm more concerned about the defense. Anytime, as good as the defensive numbers for the Patriots have been overall this year, Reid, anytime, with very rare exception, pretty much anytime this team has absolutely had to make a stop this year at some point to win a game, it hasn't been able to. It has not been able to. I mean, you look at the last meeting with Buffalo, they didn't force them to punt one time. Not one time. The Bills did not punt one time in that game in New England. And it's just it. And now, I mean, we'll see if he's available, but Jalen Mills, who's a starting cornerback for this team, is on the COVID list. So he may not be available and probably won't be, because it's a Saturday as opposed to a Sunday or Monday game.
Yeah.
So I just think, that's the side of the ball, given the wins over mostly not great teams, that would concern me more than even Mac Jones being the rookie and the weather and all of that.
Yeah. And, you take a look at, JC Jackson has been great. So he might, throw out a little bit of what Stephon Diggs wants to do. But again, like you mentioned, right? And when you look at Julian Edlow, he sent out the player split. So thank you, Eamon, for putting it in the old Twitter, the old Slack channel, that 70% of the handle is on the Bills -4, and 63% of the bets are on the Bills as well. So a lot of action right now is on Buffalo because of that. Because I think what you're saying, right, is that the Patriots come into this a little bit hobbled, right? A little bit of some question marks. And now if you want to use that to your advantage, like I don't have a stance on this. I don't have a solid take on this. I have no conviction. And I think if you look at the books in general, betting right now in the playoffs, these are mature lines. Like you're not really going to find an extreme edge in any of these because they just have so much data, right? That's not to say something weird can happen, but this is something that I'm probably going to stay away from, just because I have zero clue on what would be the alpha in this game, whether it's Bill Belichick or whether it's just skill players on the Buffalo side, including one of the best secondaries too, right? That's in the NFL, goes up against a younger team on offense. Jacoby Myers is questionable. I think Harris is questionable. I think they'll be fine. But yeah, I'm probably staying away from this.
So Saturday on the whole, obviously we were talking a little bit about the DraftKings Sportsbook. I know we didn't really get into props, and we could do that if we want to, obviously, but taking a look here at the $2.25 million fantasy football millionaire, $1 million to first place, plus of course a Tournament of Champions ticket, appealing. You want to get after that if you can. It's just 2 games. It's a classic. So, I mean, it's just a notch above a showdown in terms of the options that are available to you, but you're building out a full lengthy lineup with that 50K as opposed to just 6 guys. What is your approach? Like, is there one guy, and I'm just looking at some of the projections right now. Obviously, it will not surprise anybody. Josh Allen is the top projected scorer from that mini 2-game slate, but not wildly ahead of Joe Burrow. It's those 2 guys. And then you start to get into, Joe Mixon is a solid play. Jamar Chase, obviously, is a solid play. Your guy, Derek Carr, might be a little bit of an ownership outlier. I'd have to pull that up. But I'm just rattling off, obviously, some of the guys that are more expensive. I can get into value, but who are the guys that really jump out to you as guys you would want to lock into a lineup for Saturday, chasing that $1 million?
Yeah, I mean, from a quarterback perspective, I think you have to get, you either believing in the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow and just triple stacking with him, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase, right? Just because of what they can do against this Raiders secondary, which we know is suspect. Look what happened with the Chargers, right? They can't cover for all 4 quarters. So, but that's going to be a popular stack, right? Like I don't mind going to Derek Carr, but the thing with Derek Carr is you saw that game last week, and they had 5 quarters, and he only had I think 12 DK fantasy points. It wasn't great. Josh Jacobs is getting a little bit more involved in this game. So I'd probably want to target from a GPP standpoint, the Buffalo New England game. And then, roster a guy like Josh Allen. I think that's going to be particularly a low scoring game, and try and get all the rushing and the touchdowns and really corner the market that way. Right. Which is him, Devin Singletary, Dawson Knox, right. And build it that way, as opposed to like everyone's going to try and fit in Burrow and try and fit in that game stack. And what I think you have to do is look at that game, the New England Buffalo game, and look, I'd say like 45% of the cash right now is on the over, right? So it's like 60-40 to the under of the cash. So I don't think this is a game that's wildly going to be under. I think there's going to be scoring in it. You just have to get those scoring. And look, Devin Singletary has been that guy. He's been the lead back, the alpha in that backfield. He's only $5,800. And look at his last 4 games, right? He's giving you substantial production. And look, one of those games in week 16 was against New England, where he put up 18.8, put up 19 points, basically. Yep. So that's what I would be doing on the Saturday slate, because, right, like it's going to be, you're going to have overlap, you're going to have ownership everywhere. But I probably try and game stack that one pretty heavily and be overweight on the field.
Projected ownership right now, Reid, and this won't surprise you. The top projected quarterback is Josh Allen at about 33-34%. Burrow's right there, 32-33. Yeah. You have a little bit of a gap at Carr at about 27. Mac Jones is, that's the flyer pick right there. He's projected to be owning like 8% of lineups. But your top 5 projected owned players, again, just from the Saturday slate, in this order: Joe Mixon, who's almost 70% of lineups right now; Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, T. Higgins, then the guy you were just talking about, Devin Singletary. Any of those surprise you? Any of those that are obviously, positioned to be very popular on Saturday, that you might be more inclined to stay off of, whether for differentiation's sake or just because you're not as convinced as the field?
Yeah, I mean, so it was Mixon, Waller,
Jacobs, Higgins, Singletary.
Yeah, I mean, probably Jacobs. Like, I liked him last week from a showdown perspective, but if you're giving me options, right, at the running back position, you look at that 26 for 132, like that's a lot. It could have been more, actually. His points could have had 2 touchdowns, so that could have been the 30s. So I think it was a good call last week to use someone against Chargers. And I think the Bengals, while they have a decent defense, like how you attack the Bengals is through the air. And so, and again, this is like Hendrickson. He's been one of the more unheralded defensive linemen, defensive ends, on Cincinnati. If they can stop that pass rush, then like Jacobs maybe is an option. But again, I think this is going to be a team that's playing from behind. And what we saw for the remainder of probably the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, the Raiders, what they did when they were down on the 2-minute drill is Jalen Richard came in, right? It wasn't Josh Jacobs getting all the touches in the pass game. And look at his pass work. It's not great. It's not consistent at all. So that's something that I would be worried about with Josh Jacobs.
I'll give you 2 lower priced, seemingly, at least in my mind, pretty good value plays for Saturday. You tell me which one you like better. They're both receivers: Tyler Boyd or Zay Jones. Both of them are sub 5K.
Yeah, I think Zay Jones would probably be my option if Waller is like not 100%. Or if he gets taken out of the game, right, I would like Zay Jones. You saw when Waller was out, Zay Jones had a lot of production, top 20 weeks in like the last 4 weeks. He was getting targeted quite a bit. But when you see that Waller is back in, it doesn't really pan out because it's Hunter Renfrow, it's Waller, and then Carr just throws it away. Right? He doesn't really go through his progressions as much as he should because his offensive line doesn't really help him a lot. So Zay Jones, I would like as the second option if that were the case for the Raiders. And look, he's a deep threat guy, right? He's been that guy kind of his entire career. Now you're seeing he's becoming more of a possession receiver. Derek Carr trusts Zay Jones, and that's the other thing too that a lot of people probably don't factor in a DFS is who do these quarterbacks trust as sort of their safety blanket. For the Raiders, it's Hunter Renfrow, but the Chargers double teamed Hunter Renfrow basically every route. So I think it's going to be a big game for Waller, and that's why I worry a little bit about Zay Jones. I still think Hunter Renfrow is going to get, he's going to get his opportunities, and that's why Tyler Boyd is probably of the two guys the ones that I would like. I mean, and look at what Hunter Renfrow did. I saw a stat that he has like 100% of the end zone targets over like the last 3 weeks. I mean, he had 5 or 4 catches for 2 touchdowns and he scored 16 points. Like, he is just a guy who Derek Carr absolutely loves. And his route running is fantastic. It's fantastic. It's on the level of guys like Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen. He has that level of route running. You see how sharp he is out of his cuts. You can't guard that.
Got about 10 minutes left in the show. If anyone has any thoughts, by all means, get them in. Here's a question from Daniel in the chat. Longtime listener, first time caller. What are the odds that both the Bucks and Pats make it out of the wild card round with wins? I'll hang up and listen.
The odds, if I had to lay it, if I was a sports book, what would be the odds right now for both of those teams to make it out? I guess Daniel is a Tom Brady and a Patriots fan.
Yeah, it would seem so.
Which is why he cares.
Yeah.
The odds of them making it out, I mean, they're not bad. I mean, the Bucks are what, 10-point favorites?
Yeah, I mean, the Bucks really should win. The Patriots are the upset pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think those are pretty good odds. Like, I would, if I were a sports book, I'd probably make them at even money. Like maybe -120. That's what I would give you, Daniel. Because you look, it's the Patriots, and look at their money line. What's the Patriots money line right now?
Patriots money line, let's see, +170.
Yeah, and look at Tampa Bay's money line. It's -365. So yeah, I'd probably still make that like kind of an upset, but like even then, you take a look at this Buffalo team, we know like they know each other. And if Josh Allen is a little bit, like insecure with that ball protection, this is going to be Patriots all day.
Daniel, what I'll say to you is, I mean, if you really are confident in these two teams, I mean, you got to put your money where your mouth is, like Julian Edelman. Did you see Edelman's bet? Laid down $100 or $1,000 on a Pats Bucks Super Bowl matchup.
Oh, it's not bad.
No, not bad, what the heck, right?
1,000. It's a little bit weak though. 1,000.
Well, I mean, he's not willing to get burned.
Well, I mean, I think he's got 1,000 to burn. I think he's got more than 1,000 to burn. But I guess he's not as confident in his boy and his former team.
Yeah, I guess not. He's probably plenty confident in his
right.
pal Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. Let's quickly look at the Sunday games because we are low on time. And these games, at least 2 out of the 3, do not project to be nearly as compelling as the 2 Saturday games that we talked about. You got the Eagles in Tampa, 9.5 points. Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Bruce Arians, the defending champs, are favored to win that game. The Cowboys and Niners, that's basically a pick 'em. Dallas getting 3 points at home. And then at night, Steelers in what projects to be Ben Roethlisberger's final game, unless he does come back next year for not Pittsburgh. Kansas City is favored by 12.5 points at home, the defending AFC champs. What are your expectations for these games?
Should be good. I mean, obviously the San Francisco Dallas game is going to be really fun to watch. Like Kyle Shanahan knows that team. He is one of his former coaches, Dan Quinn. He's coached with him, so he knows that defense. He's probably going to have a couple of plays up his sleeve. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. So if I'm targeting a main slate, I'm looking at Dak and Amari Cooper stacks and looking at really targeting this specific game personally. Because if you look at the San Francisco offense too, or excuse me, the defense, it opens up for Dallas's pass game. It's a pass funnel offense, defense. They have a really good run defense on San Francisco, not a great pass defense. So I really like the Dallas side of that. I think it's going to be close. Tampa Bay and Philly, like there's some weather concerns there, especially rain and wind. If that mitigates and there's not a lot of rain, I think the over is definitely going to play at 46 because we know Philadelphia and Jalen Hurts can break a game open. Even though they want to run the ball and Tampa Bay's run defense is solid, it hasn't been great of recent, right? So that could be, closer to a 50-point game, 48-point game. And this number has gone down 3.5, I think, because of the weather. Leonard Fournette should be back in. That's going to help out a ton. Gio Bernard should be back. That's going to help out a ton. So I do like targeting the over if the weather decides to stay away, especially that rain and wind. And you know what's interesting about the Steelers and Chiefs? Like the Chiefs are going to, like, we all know, right? And 12.5. This is, I think, the most a wild card team has been favored by is 12.5. I would not bet the Steelers like at all. But if you're a Steelers fan, why not just bet the money line, right? At plus 450.
Sure.
This is Ben's last game, a couple of bad bounces here and there. Who knows? I don't think it's going to happen. But sure, you can take the points at plus 12.5. But if this is his last game, why not throw it on the money line? I don't suggest betting on the Steelers. I don't suggest using them in teaser legs, even if you get it below 7 or, that key number of 7. It's just they need everything to go their way. They need to have plays that they've never run before. Juju Smith-Schuster might play.
Yeah.
Doubt it. But why not, right? If this is Ben Roethlisberger's last game, why not? I don't advise it, but I would not knock anybody from a fandom standpoint if they wanted back to Steelers.
Patrick Mahomes at the moment, Reid, is the top projected scorer in terms of fantasy across all 6 of these games that are coming up here between Saturday and Monday. That being said, 12.5 points. We think it's going to be a blowout, unless maybe you're a diehard Steelers fan, like you said. So is he a guy that you want to stay away from because you just think, I don't know, this game could get out of hand. They're not going to take any chances. Maybe he doesn't play most of the fourth quarter or something like that. And so you're losing, or they're going to be running the ball throughout the second half or whatever it may be. Are you inclined to go with a different QB than on that Sunday in particular? And maybe Dak, for instance, if you think that game's going to be a shootout and it's going to be close the whole time, as opposed to a Mahomes.
Yeah, I would, because again, we've seen Mahomes not necessarily, have to air it out as much, right? Especially in a game like this where he might not be playing, or if he is, we've seen good games from the Chiefs of recent, but Tyreek Hill's coming in a little bit banged up with the heel injury. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is being a little bit banged up, and sure, that might help Mahomes, but like I mentioned, Dak Prescott is in a great spot against this defense that just allows teams to pass. And if you look at Dak's last 3 weeks, he's finished as a top 5 quarterback in each of those weeks. And this last one, he finished as number 1. These guys scored 50 plus points in 2 of the last 3 games. So I'm much more inclined to go to that Dallas side. And I think it's going to be a high scoring game. Again, I would try and game stack Dallas and San Francisco and stay away from the Chiefs and stay away from that Philly Bucks game because of the weather.
The Monday night game, Arizona, team that I loved coming into this season, and I continue to be a big supporter of the Cardinals. We've been talking about them for a couple of years now, and of course, everybody's picked to win the Super Bowl after all the moves in the offseason, Matt Stafford, and then adding OBJ and so on and so forth. The Rams, people are so high on the Rams. You got rid of Goff and picks, and this is the team. Watch out now, LA's coming for you. Home Super Bowl again. We'll see it. Second straight year. Are the Rams going to get this done? Are the Cardinals going to upset them? It's a 4-point spread on the DK Sportsbook. Yeah,
I mean, it's moving. If you want the Cardinals, it's moving in that direction, right? I mean, the 3.5s got gobbled up, I think, but I think I saw that just fairly recently with the Rams. But look, I mean, no DeAndre Hopkins, that's a lot, right? This all hinges, Koff, on Stafford being safe with the ball. If he throws interceptions, then this game is going to be a stressful one for you Rams fans. I have some Rams futures because I thought, preseason that even before they got OBJ, before they got Von Miller, that they were going to be a team to reckon with. But having said that, look at their secondary. Taylor Rapp, I think, has a concussion. I don't know if he's going to be playing. Jordan Fuller is out. And they just signed 400-year-old Eric Weddle. I think he's 37, not 400, like Lord Raiden. But
yeah, just nice Mortal Kombat reference. I appreciate that.
Thank you. But like, this is, like it's tough to really feel confident in any of these teams. And like the Cardinals defense has been bad. If I had to pick a side, I'd pick the Rams right now, but I like them much more at 3.5 and 3, especially, than at 4. This number is moving towards the Cardinals' way. And if Stafford is going to be throwing up, interception after interception, that scares me quite a bit.
See, now I just wish Lord Raiden was in the Eternals. He would have fit really well in that movie, actually. We needed a crossover, I think.
Can't do that Jetsons Flintstones crossover. You can't do
that. One of my favorites. I think I have it on VHS somewhere. All right. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. No time for basketball, no time for the Sony Open, because the 6 o'clock Madden Sim, it waits for no one. Ben Roethlisberger, it's not his final game in Simland. You can count on that. He'll be available coming up against Cincinnati and Joe Burrow. Couple of playoff teams matching up here in the Madden Sim that comes your way in a matter of moments. Thanks to Daniel. Thanks to Eamon, our producer. And of course, Reid T. I'm Adam. Thanks for being with us. The Slate comes right back at you. Same time tomorrow after the 4 o'clock Sim, right around 5 o'clock Eastern. And of course, the Sweat in the morning. We'll all talk to you then.